Good evening, former colleagues from the FBR cabinet. So happy to see everyone here tonight. By the way, this event is being live streamed on the Facebook page, the FBR Legacy. So if there are any of you who have families and friends who want to go on FB right now, please advise them by text that this is being live streamed. So tonight I have been given the honor, actually asked by my colleague Shell Habito, to organize the eulogies and the tributes for our former boss, President Fidel V. Ramos. So we have 10 of his former cabinet members who will speak to us tonight. The first one that I would like to call on is the Honorable Franklin M. Drilon, former senator, and Justice Secretary during the time of President Ramos, Senator Drilon.
Thank you very much, Nars. I will not go through greeting everyone. I will just want to say good evening to all my former colleagues in the Ramos cabinet. My dear friends, I open with a question. How does one do justice to the life of a remarkable person? A man who, despite occupying the highest post in the land, lived his life with discretion, with humility, and dignity. We owe our democracy to him. While President Cory was the enduring symbol of its restoration, the role of then General Ramos, and later Secretary Ramos, in ensuring its preservation is not often talked about in great detail. President Ramos, as we all know, is one of the heroes of EDSA and was instrumental in its success. In his biography written by W. Scott Thompson, Joe Almonte described General Ramos as someone who, quote, no desk-bound commander, often in the field, living with the soldiers where they were. He knew all his field commanders intimately. Only he could call them down, call him to our side. When he led the soldiers in the EDSA revolution, he placed his country above himself. He placed his country even above his family. He knew the importance of democracy and was willing to risk his life. As Secretary of Defense, I saw it. When I was Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Justice, I was with the President Ramos as Labor Secretary, and he was the Defense Secretary. And at that time, there was turmoil in the labor front. My good friend here in Nieves can witness that. We were together in the Department of Labor. But President Ramos provided some stability in that very unstable labor situation by signing that memorandum, issuing the memorandum, which basically said to my soldiers, don't interfere in the picket line. Leave that to labor and management to settle. And that removed a lot of tension in the picket lines. As Secretary of Defense, I saw him defend President Cory and democracy no less than, how many, Rene? 9 times? 9 coups during the time. And he was steadfast. And indeed, I saw why he was called Steady Eddie. Kahit ano pong gulo, pag si Eddie Ramos ang kausap mo, alam mo na walang mangyayari doon sa mga nagtatangkang ibagsak ang pamalaan. President Cory recognized his competence, recognized his integrity, and endorsed him for president against all odds. I remember, we had only one governor when President Cory endorsed Ramos, and that was Governor Douglas Cagas of Davao. Wala na po kami ibang kasama. But, and even his brother-in-law, Pipinko Huangco, her brother-in-law, Pipinko Huangco, was silently rooting for the late Monching Mitra. But Cory stood fast, and she endorsed President Ramos as her successor against all odds. President Ramos was not a traditional politician, but it turns out that President Cory made an excellent choice. Being a non-politician allowed President Ramos to bring fresh, pragmatic insights to the presidency. He was a working, thinking president, a technocrat, and we in the cabinet respected him for it. He came to meetings prepared and expected no less from us. He introduced me to the concept of CSW. I am sure all of you former cabinet members know what CSW meant, but not having been associated or not having worked with President Ramos while he was in the DND, I was always wondering what CSW in red ink was all about, until I knew that it meant complete staff work. And these are marginal notes which would clutter whatever memo you have because of that issue, of that question. That was the mark of his professionalism and style of management. He took the work of governance seriously, and our country was better because of it. Steady Eddie, he was called. You know, we were confronted with many critical situations during that time. I'll describe to you one. Rene is here and can confirm it. If you remember, there was a shooting in the Magallanes compound, Magallanes Theater. And it caused the death of a certain colonel who was a classmate of Secretary Ramos then, and Rene de Villa, and all those star-studded generals. So there was so much tension that Cory had to confront with. And I remember, Rene, that fateful dinner in Arlegui, where Cory, I faced all the generals. Lahat po, mayroong stars dito. Sabi ko kay Presidente Cory, Ma'am, pag nagkudita dito, lagot tayo, tayong dalawa lang. But again, Eddie showed his sense of justice and fairness. He looked for solutions. And the solution was Rene and the late Alfredo Lim had dinner in the house, and we tried to settle the dispute. While the three of us were talking, there were armed bodyguards outside my gate in Green Hills. But again, Eddie, as I would recall, he is known as Steady Eddie because hindi po siya kinakabahan, hindi siya nararattle. Basta he just looks for the solution. That is the kind of person that I recall of President Ramos. And he earned that moniker not only Steady Eddie, but also he made the country turn around economically, so that from being a sick man of Asia, that we were called, by the end of his term, the Philippines was Asia's rising tiger. No small achievement given the difficulties that he faced. Even in his presidency, he would call or write to express his thoughts on policy issues. He would send cutouts of newspaper articles with his comments on them. I'm sure all of you got your own load of those newspaper clippings, his columns in the Manila Bulletin, together with all his notations. From these experience, you can glean that his love for country was not contingent on him being in public office or holding a position of power. It endured past his political career. He was undoubtedly a patriot who served the country for most of his life. The freedoms we now enjoy are in large part thanks to his courage and resoluteness in defending our democracy. In the Philippines and the modern world, democracy may have been vilified, scorned, or doubted. The same can be said of the revolution which he helped lead. But we remember this great man and how he was a working, thinking president, a true technocrat. And we in the cabinet respected him for that. He came to meetings prepared, always. And it is in the later part of my political career when I joined meetings among some bureaucrats. I miss the way President Ramos would conduct the meetings with precision, with full knowledge, with the full grasp of what was happening. And indeed, we will all miss him. We will indeed miss a great statesman who shaped our history. If we are here tonight, being able to peacefully condole with the family of President Ramos, a great part of that is because he fought for our liberties, he fought for our democracy. So it is but fitting that we gather here tonight and pay our tribute to President Ramos. And so let me end by extending my condolence to the family of President Ramos. We thank Ming Ramos and his family for lending us steady Eddie over all those years. The country owes him for where we are today. So with that, let me thank you for this opportunity to share with you, probably for the last time, how our lives were affected by President Ramos, personally and for the country. And by the way, President Ramos was my ninong in my wedding with my wife here, Mila, 25 years ago, together with Cory Aquino. They were sponsors to our wedding. That is why it is with profound personal loss that I feel that indeed I have lost a friend and mentor. Thank you very much, and a pleasant good evening to everyone.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. While you were talking, I was watching the grandchildren who are seated in front, and I was telling myself, it must be so awesome and so wonderful for you to be listening tonight to stories about your grandfather that maybe you have not heard before. So we look forward to the other speakers, and the next one is somebody we welcome because we have not seen him for a long time, and until yesterday he was not part of our Viber chat group. But now, Secretary Rene de Villa, a comrade in arms and good friend of the late President, will address us.
Alisin ko siguro ito, no? Thank you very much, Nars. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. maybe there are those who still don't know me. I'm Renato de Villa, a longtime friend of President Ramos. First and foremost, I would like to convey in behalf of my family our deepest sympathy and condolence to Mrs. Wing Ramos, who I understand was here earlier today, and the rest of the family of former President Ramos. It is an honor for me to be one of those who will pay tribute to him and honor him tonight. I first met President Ramos in 1957 at the foothills of the Sierra Madre in Tayabas, Quezon. I was a second lieutenant, fresh from PMA, and President Ramos was a captain. I was assigned in the 3rd Battalion Combat Team, and President Ramos was assigned in the headquarters of the 2nd Military Area. We were in the area for operations, looking for and trying to hunt down a small band of insurgents called, especially for the young ones, Hooks. HUKS, for Hukbong Mapagpalaya ng Bayan. Or they were the insurgents during our time. When I saw him, we greeted each other and exchanged notes with respect to the operations that we are conducting. And thereafter, we parted ways to pursue our respective missions. That was in 1957, or 65 years ago. A long, long time of our friendship up to the day that he left last Sunday. Forward to 1986. FBR, as is fondly known to all those who served with him in government, was the chief PCINP and concurrently Vice Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines under General Fabian Ber. I then was commander of the PCINP command in the Bicol region, in Region 5. And concurrently, commander of the Regional Unified Command under General Ver, also in Region 5. Under my command and control then was the entire Philippine Constabulary Organization in the Bicol region, in all provinces, plus 1 battalion of Army, officers and men, and a battalion of the Philippine Marines. On the second day of the crisis in Manila, the People Power Revolt, President Ramos called me at night and asked me if I knew what is going on. And of course, I said yes. And he said, okay, you stay there and stick to your mission of maintaining peace and order in your region. But additionally, he said, try your best not to get the Army and Marines involved in what's going on, and try to prevent them from going to Manila. He then reminded me to keep peace in the region and ensure that the NPA do not take advantage of the crisis that is developing in Manila. FBR called me again from his base in Kamkrame and told me that Kamkrame was about to be attacked by forces under General Baer and still loyal to President Marcos. He asked me to assemble a company of PC officers and men and be ready to reinforce Kamkrame and for our boys to be picked up at the Naga airport the following morning. That task was accomplished totally, and our boys did not get engaged along the way because they were along the way to Krame because they were protected by priests and nuns who surrounded them as they marched beyond the lines of the Marines who were poised to attack Krame and until they reached the camp. So, President Ramos or FBR conveyed that a second company that I was preparing to send was no longer necessary. He just told me, stay put and be ready to come to Manila and report to me, which actually happened later. We now fast forward to 1989. This was the year when Gringo Honasan and the RAM launched their biggest and strongest coup attempt against the Cory government. However, not many know that that last attempt, though it was large and heavy, was doomed to fail because prior to that time, sometime earlier in 1987, President Ramos had already decided our stand insofar as the government is concerned. He called for a conference, a closed-door conference of major service commanders and the chief of constabulary, and directed that they support his stand to defend democracy and the Cory government from a regime change. And that settled in the minds of most of us in the commander's level, as well as the soldiers under us, what the mission should be insofar as coup attempts is concerned. And that is to stop those coup attempts and prevent a regime change of the Cory government. After that meeting, he directed me to draft a message to inform all major service commanders and all field commanders of the armed forces and the Philippine National Police to take orders only from him and no one else. So my friends, I related these short stories about my association with President Ramos, FBR, to most of us, in order to highlight his character, his values, and his leadership. Because I have worked with him, under him, for a long, long time. And we had developed an indestructible friendship with each other, as well as the ability to coordinate with each other insofar as serving the country is concerned. He was a military professional, a perfect officer and gentleman. And his leadership is simple. It was simply to set the example to all those who serve with him, as well as those who follow him. He was the skydiver who would jump out of the plane with his parachute, but at the same time carrying a box of beer for his boys on the ground when he lands. He was also a disciplinarian insofar as duties and responsibilities are concerned. He stood as a model of what a soldier, a Filipino soldier, should be. And we all saw that, we all recognized that, and he demonstrated that he can do what everyone under him can do. As a matter of fact, if some of you may have heard, every summer we have to hike from the Edsas Rhine all the way to Antipolo very early in the morning so that he can keep up with his health and exercise. And even when we were in a visit into the United States, in one morning, during breakfast, the late Bobby Romulo told me, "Rene, I almost died this morning." And I said, "Why?" FBR went for a jog, went jogging in the Central Park, and I have no rubber shoes. So I said, "Swerte mo yan, Bobby." So, many, many more things that I know. We have been friends for 65 years up to today. And it will fill 2 hours for me to relate all the things I know about who FBR was. There are many more incidents and many more situations where he proved himself to be a real leader. CSW, I think everybody in the cabinet learned what CSW is, as mentioned by Frank, and that is the completed staff work. He was very fond of writing his instructions in the margins of the memorandum or the letter that you sent to him. And if it is not completely done, he would read it to you, return the memorandum to you, full of red ink, and and you are required to change. He was also very concerned with how the government is being looked upon by media. And he instructed, I don't know, the cabinet members are here, he instructed the cabinet to make sure that they read the newspapers very early in the morning, and if there is something that pertains to them, for him to be able, for that cabinet member to be able to prepare a response and have it released to the media before 12 o'clock in the same morning. He caught me one time because he is used to waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, reading all the newspapers, as Frank said, and sending you memos of his clippings. And he said, do you know about this fund mess that is reported here in the bulletin that happened in Tanay, in the training command in Tanay? And I said, I'm sorry, sir, I have not read it yet. And he said, God damn, you better buy newspapers and read them. And make sure that you answer it before noontime. And so dutifully, I said, yes, sir. And that was the lesson. From that point on, he never caught me again sleeping with respect to news reports. So, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, there are many more characteristics that I can tell you about FDR, our friend, our boss, our mentor, our guide, and our director, insofar as being in government is concerned. I believe, and I fear no contradiction on this, that FDR, as President of the Republic, had fully dedicated himself to the service of the Filipino people. He was indeed a disciplinarian, but at the same time, he was a compassionate person. And he paid much attention to his anti-poverty program. He also paid much attention to, this is his favorite phrase, leveling the field in business and industry. And I cannot think of any other person in government at that time, in a position of responsibility, who had such a passion for working for the people. I believe that, and again, I do not expect any contradiction to this. I believe that he has dedicated himself to the Philippines, to the well-being of the Philippines, coming from his mind and his heart. We have had a great president who tried his very best to move the country forward in terms of progress, as well as in terms of the well-being of the people. So, my friends, after knowing him and being his friend, his supporter, his student for so long a time, and having observed him very closely, and at times almost everywhere that he went to, insofar as travel is concerned, I do believe that he was really, as Frank has said, a great president, a great statesman. He traveled to promote the Philippines, especially in the ASEAN region, in Europe and in the United States. He went around to promote investments as well as trade, and to a certain extent, in certain cases, the security concerns of the country. So there you are. So there you are. We had a president who was a true Filipino patriot, a genuine and indefatigable leader of the country. He was, as I said earlier, a great president who remains to be matched by his successors. God must have observed FBR as closely as we did, and more, and said, "My son Eddie, you have worked so hard for so long for your country. It's time to rest." Sir, thank you for your most outstanding service to the Filipino people and our beloved Philippines. May you rest in peace in the loving care of our Lord in heaven. And I salute you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Rene. That was very rich in history. And I would encourage you to write all your memories of your 65 years of friendship. By the way, may we request all the eulogists to give us copies of their eulogy. As you know, the first presidential digital library is the FVR Digital Library, which was launched, had a soft launch a few months ago, and will be fully launched at the end of the year. So all the eulogies will find a place in the digital presidential library. Thank you. Our next speaker was a former DILG secretary, my friend, Rafi Alunan.